This was the state of the bathroom in my workshop. It was just full of clutter. I decided I needed to start over, and that included replacing the sink and vanity, updating the light, and giving it a fresh coat of paint. The update plan for the bathroom always involved trying to make a sink out of a tool cabinet. You've got some problems with this, so I didn't want to spend a ton of money. I went over to Lowe's.com and I found a Craftsman Toolbox for a pretty decent price that was going to work perfect. I checked out the specs and it was the right height and the right width and depth to fit in the space I had. After finding a cabinet that fit my needs, I had to find a sink that fit the cabinet. Luckily, I also found this 15-inch sink at Lowe's that was going to fit perfectly inside the cabinet I had purchased. So the game plan is to cut a hole in the top of the cabinet, then put down this rubberized mat that has this diamond plate texture to it, cut a hole in that, and insert the sink in that new hole. After I have all that squared away, flip it around, mark where the pipes need to come in the back for the plumbing, and cut that hole out. Then I'd have a sink. I get nervous anytime I'm cutting something that isn't easily fixed, so I made sure to measure 5 or 6 times before I cut the hole in the top of this toolbox. After I got all the measurements figured out and I was pretty certain on where the middle was going to be, I went ahead and laid some blue tape down and marked pencil lines on the tape. Then I put the sink back on top just to make sure, and I knew I was in the right spot. Before I could make the cut, however, I had to remove this locking mechanism. That involved removing 2 rivets in the back of the top and then dropping that bar down and removing the lock. These rails in the back are what hold the drawers in when the locks engage. I knew I was going to have to cut a hole in this side, so I went ahead and removed this rail while I was back here. There's several ways I could have cut the top off this toolbox. I thought about using a jigsaw, but then I got a little nervous that the saw blade might bind in this thin metal and cause it to bend towards the end of one of the cuts. I didn't need the cuts to be perfectly straight, so I decided to use an angle grinder and make some sparks. I got this foam rubber mat from Home Depot back in the section with the rugs and the floor mats. It's kind of like an anti-fatigue material, but I really liked it. On the top side, it's got a diamond plate pattern to it and it was going to be perfect for what I needed. Whenever I use a razor knife to make cuts like this, I always cut on the outside of the guide, so if the knife slips, I don't accidentally cut into the material I want to keep. The hole in the back was another area I wasn't really worried about how pretty it was, so I took some generous measurements to make sure that the hole was at least large enough to go over the existing pipe in the wall. I used a Sharpie and a straight edge to just get a good defined line, and then I used the grinder again to cut the back out. Surprisingly, one of the more difficult parts of the build was the sink install. This was a kitchen sink. The kitchen sink is designed for 1.5" plumbing and has a separate tailpiece from the drain assembly. The bathroom sink I removed, the tailpiece was part of the drain assembly and it was 1.25" plumbing. So it took several trips to Lowe's to find the right pieces that I could put together and finally get all this to marry up. In the end, it works perfectly and I'm happy with the results. When I ended up with the Craftsman Toolbox for the sink, I knew I needed a Craftsman toilet paper holder as well. I took the original holder that was in the bathroom and I threaded the end. Then I took an old Craftsman screwdriver, heated it up to where I could pull the handle off, and then I tapped the handle and screwed it onto the end. When I mounted the holder onto the toolbox, I had to notch out this handle a little bit to where I could put this retention bracket back on the toolbox. But just with a little work, everything fit perfectly. So the drawers have to work in this toolbox, and what I basically did was find how much of the back was going to impact the plumbing and cut that out. Then I drew a line down the middle of the remaining bottom of the drawer and folded it up to create new sides. Then I welded the piece that I had previously removed up at the front as the new back of the drawer, and it created U's to go around all the plumbing. I did use a jigsaw in this part, equipped with a sheet metal blade. I flipped the drawers upside down so I could make some slow cuts up. Then once I got the two sides cut, I flipped the drawer back over and bent this back part down. Then I was able to make a straight cut across, and that was the piece I was able to repurpose as my new drawer front. After I notched out the back, I used a jigsaw to cut a line right up the middle. Then I used a 2x4 as a straight edge and bit those wings up to become the new sides of the inside of the drawer. I'm not an expert welder, and this is really thin metal, so I knew if I went too fast I was going to burn right through it. I also didn't clean the metal off because I didn't want to have to repaint too much. So what I basically did was just tack down the sides, give it a second or two to cool off before I hit my next bead. After I completed all the welding on the inside of the drawers, I took them outside just for some rattle can black. This should help with them being in a bathroom in a wet environment, and then I reassembled the tool chest. And here we see the results of all that hard work. I've got the light up top from the Because We Make and Lightness Challenge. I added these wall control pegboards in black to match the drawers. Then we've got our Craftsman Vanity sink. I swapped out my old bin cart for this louvered steel wall panel organizer, and I think it goes great in the bathroom with the rest of the upgrades. And then of course the cherry on top, the functioning drawers. It was actually kind of funny, I don't have enough stuff to put in the drawers right now, but I have a feeling that won't be a problem for long. Well, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you enjoyed this project as much as I did. Look forward to seeing you on the next one.